Welcome back to the European Market Open, half an hour into our European trading day, the last of the week, of course. Now, this half hour, we're focusing on the way we work. The pandemic has seen a monumental shift in where and how people do their jobs. With the lights at the tunnel growing closer in many of the world's financial hubs, some companies are beginning to plan their returns to offices, while others are experimenting with more hybrid models. We'll be speaking to Standard Chartered's head of HR about how the lender's work-life balance is shifting, and we'll hear from Helena Morrissey about how the changing work environment is impacting on equality goals. First, here's how some of our guests at our Bloomberg Live event see our work environments changing.
The future of work is really about the future of workers.
What to me is the most important question is really defining what a worker is. From that, all the other aspects around worker advocacy, around mental health, et cetera, emanate from there.
You have to stay abreast of the evolution as we all move into this new normal and this hybrid environment.
You've got to come up with a new operating model. That operating model is going to have some cultural changes. It's going to have some norms that are new.
Maybe 80% of people are going to come back to work in a hybrid way.
We are just about ready to enter into what I'm calling the messy middle, where some people are going to be in the office and some people won't.
By the fall, we think we'll be able to sort of open all of our offices in a more fulsome way.
We thought 2020 was complicated, and in fact it was, but in many ways, what we needed to do was more clear. 2021 is far more complicated because how we do things, at what pace, and what impact small individual decisions will have, we will only know by experiencing it.
Some really interesting insights on the way that the world of work is shifting. So far, the roadmap for office workers has been anything but straightforward. Some businesses are hoping to entice employees back to deserted offices. Others are doubling down on the lure of living rooms. But which way are most firms leaning? Let's get a look at the current state of play. Danny Berger has lent her expertise to this story. Danny, is there any clear indication of what most businesses plan to do? What will normal look like?
Well, we even heard it there from some of our prior guests. Really, the hybrid model seems to be the one most people are leaning to, but that could also just be an indication of we don't know exactly what things will look like, so why not do a little bit of both? I do have a survey from us from BCG. This was commissioned by Zoom. I just want to point that out because Zoom does benefit from more people at home. But in the survey, they asked businesses throughout the globe, would you consider some sort of flexible working model? Are you going to do that? And you can see for most places, well over half of the businesses surveyed said, yes, we will have some sort of hybrid model. Now, the lowest on the rank here is Japan, followed by the U.S. And at the top end, we have India and the U.K. as well. U.K. hitting 73% of businesses saying that they will have some sort of hybrid model. But the reality, at least for now, is very different than that. And I want to take you into my terminal for this because we can look at data that shows exactly how many workers are in the office. So this is data from Matricus, and they basically install sensors in office buildings to keep track of this sort of thing. So 100 on the map here, on the chart here being everybody from pre-COVID levels is back in. Now, at the moment, we have about 22% of workers in the UK who are back in the office. There has been a very, very slow curve upwards here, hitting the 29th. This is on a week delay, so we don't have this week's data when that blanket stay-at-home order was finally lifted. But the guidance had been, if you can work at home, do so. But even before, when we had some easing restrictions, this figure never got above 50%. We never had half of workers back into the office. So it definitely, at least for now, seems like in the UK, this figure might be depressed for some time.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, Danny? You mentioned the hybrid models that many are leaning towards. Interesting to think about whether that is intended as an end point or just, as we heard from Microsoft, some kind of messy middle, some kind of transitory phase. Thinking about the banking sector then, and banks especially have been pretty vocal about working from home and the impact that that has on their employees. I'm thinking about Goldman Sachs, and we all know what top management thinks about the work from home dynamic. Do they plan on welcoming bankers back to London offices? What's the European angle on this?
Well, we definitely have seen a divide. And of course, what David Solomon is saying will impact London workers as well. And the divide does seem to be one of, as you say, of Goldman saying this isn't good for our employees, especially young employees, for productivity, for mental health. And the other side of things being, hey, we can save save money. We can pull back on our real estate occupancy, and that will help us. So one of the things that David Solomon said, he called the remote working, the working from home, an aberration, saying it's something they're going to quickly correct. So as of the 29th, so as of this week, when that blanket stay-at-home order was lifted in the UK, London office workers were welcomed back. We don't have figures on how many of them actually took Goldman up on that offer. Jess Staley, at the same time, he said that he wants people back in the office. He's looking forward to welcoming them back at some time this year. Then we get to the other camp, which I talked about, which is HSBC and Santander. Both of them have talked about flexibility in their annual report in HSBC's case. And Nathan Bostic, the UK CEO, again, more flexible working. HSBC, they are getting rid of some of their leases beyond Canary Wharf in the UK, in London rather. Santander taking up less office space that they already have. Of course, leases take a while to get out of, so this will be a quickly changing picture as we're seeing businesses who are actually able to do that, Anna.
Absolutely, a fast-changing picture, a really interesting one when you work in that sector. Danny, thank you very much. Bloomberg's Danny Berger with a look at what the hybrid models might look like. Is that the way of the future? And indeed, what many in the banking sector are doing. We're going to be sticking with the banking sector next. Standard Chartered is one of the companies planning a hybrid working model. We'll talk more about the future of flexible working with Standard Chartered's head of human resources. That conversation with Tanuj Kapilashrami coming up next. This is Bluemag.
I do think there'll be part of the world where a certain amount of people work from home permanently, certain sales, certain ops, so you can track the productivity, et cetera. I think there'll be a large portion who permanently work in the office.
The feedback that we've had from our people actually tells us that they want to work at least 1 to 3 days from home at some point in the future. So that doesn't mean for everybody, but certainly I think that is something which we'll be looking to explore in the coming months and years.
It is very much our goal to be back in the office together, hopefully even to have some of our trainees this summer be at least partly in the office.
We're going to bring people back when it's safe, and we're going to give people notice. So, I'm certainly hoping with, the increase in vaccinations that, it's sometime around the summer, towards the end of the summer, when we can get back to life as normal. But we're going to play it by ear.
Some of the bank CEOs that we've been speaking to about how they see a return to the office going. Staying with the banking theme, Standard Chartered is embracing a hybrid working model between home and the office. The lender is also mapping out how to keep workers productive at home. That's as much of the bank's workforce wants flexible locations and hours, pioneered, of course, during the coronavirus pandemic. The lender is rolling out the programme to its 85,000 staff globally in a sweeping overhaul of its working practices. I'm pleased to say we are joined now by Tanuj Kapilashrami, who is Standard Chartered's head of human resources. Tanuj, thank you very much for your time. So you've got a plan that isn't just hybrid between home and office. It also includes what you call near office locations. So there is sort of a hub and spoke dimension to this. Is this your end game, or do you see this as just a transitional arrangement?
Thanks, Anna. I will start off by saying that, like many other bank CEOs, who've spoken in the program before, we did do extensive employee listening last year, and it was very clear to us, based on the surveys that we conducted, that a majority of our workforce, 75% of them globally to be precise, wanted to come back to a world where they could work a minimum 50% of their time from home. Interestingly, the percentage of people who said that they want to work from home all the time was a very, very low single digit. And it was that insight, that feedback from our employees, which led us to design our approach to hybrid working, which I'm very pleased to say we have now rolled out in our top 10 markets where we employ 45,000 colleagues. And the next phase with our next 20 markets will go live later in the year. Flexibility for us is not just home working and coming into offices, but we are also providing colleagues an opportunity, or some of the colleagues an opportunity to sign up to near home working arrangements. We've done a tie-up with IWG, where for certain types of roles, we provide our colleagues the optionality to meet a colleague, a work buddy, or a client in a near home location.
And that's interesting, Tanuj. This use of near office locations, I assume that gives employees the flexibility to move to other parts of the country that they might not have considered before. How do you ensure, though, when you're working with a third party, you're a bank, data security's got to be front of mind. So how do you make sure that they can do everything very securely from a third party location?
That's a very, very good question, and we've spent quite a bit of time thinking about it. I will start off by saying that when we designed our approach to hybrid working overall, we did an analysis at a job family level. So in a bank, there are some roles which clearly cannot be done in any other location outside of their main offices. Tellers, traders, and all of those roles will be done or will continue to be done from our offices. So the work that's been done is at a job family level for us to be very, very sure that we meet all the standards around regulations in the market. For IWG as well, the only roles which get the opportunity to go to the near home locations are those where we are able to manage all the risks that you talk about. So any role which is done in a restricted area in a bank cannot be done in an IWG space. We also have specific approvals in place that colleagues need to take from their people leaders to use that space, and we are monitoring the use of that space very, very carefully. So IWG or near home for us is not a replacement for home or office, and it's something that we expect colleagues to use sparingly, not as a permanent location.
And Tanuj, how do you balance the demands on office space? Because as a result of this, you might be able to get rid of some office space, which is clearly a cost saving, but not if everybody wants to come into the office Tuesday to Thursday. So how do you balance those two things? Clearly, you want people to be able to cross over and to see each other still at some point. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah. And which is why I think having a well-defined program was quite important. So the way we've done it in our top 10 markets is colleagues have expressed their interest formally to their people leaders. So this is not just saying whether I want flexibility or not. It's getting quite precise about the number of days and also being quite clear on the days they want to work from home. So by putting a formal process around that, it's given people leaders data around employee preference for all of their teams. So as a people leader, I've got access to the requirements for everyone in my team. We have then married that work with the top-down work on looking at flexibility at a job family level, so the work I alluded to. What does that do as a leader for me is set very clear standards around working practices for my team and actually have a two-way conversation. And we have really encouraged all our colleagues to have conversations with people leaders to ensure that we avoid the bunching effect in office, exactly what you are referring to. But also when colleagues do come into work, collaboration days where the whole team comes into work, the experience of the workplace is worth it. So there is quite a bit of work we are doing on redesigning what our offices are going to look like in this hybrid world, and creating enough space for collaboration, enough space for teams to come together to ideate and problem solve.
So this does not sound like what we heard from Microsoft being described as the messy middle or a sort of transition phase. This sounds like you're defining the future of what working at Standard Chartered is going to look like. This isn't something transitory. This is here to stay.
Absolutely. Our point of view is that hybrid, you could argue, is perhaps the toughest of the three options. The other two being everyone working from office or everyone being working from home. We are very clear, however, that it also presents really unique opportunities for innovation, redefining leadership models, and actually just fundamentally rethinking how work gets done in the future. So we believe offices are important to meet clients, to collaborate, to problem solve. But we also believe that colleagues can get much better balance, focus on their well-being, impact on sustainability, society, give them that balance by giving them the opportunity to do the tasks which they need to do themselves from home. So for us, we are thinking of hybrid as a real opportunity to redefine future of work, worker, and workplaces. And for us, it is something which is here to stay.
Okay, Tanuj, great to speak to you. Thank you very much for bringing us the story. Tanuj Kapilashrami, Standard Chartered Head of Human Resources. Interesting insights into how Standard Chartered is managing that return to the office. Coming up on the programme, we stick with this theme. We speak to Helena Morrissey, Chair of the Diversity Project, about the hybrid work model, the impact on women and what the future looks like for female progression within financial services. We'll bring that angle out in this conversation about the future of work. That's next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the European Market Open. We are 50 minutes into our trading day here in Europe. This half hour, though, we're stepping away from the day-to-day markets and focusing on the way we work. The shift towards more flexible working could be a game changer for women who have been disproportionately affected by their working arrangements and childcare responsibilities during the crisis. The change in perception could help narrow the gender gap in the financial services industry, according to a report by Women in Banking and Finance, and it could help retain women in the workforce who are often the primary caregiver at home and rely more on flexibility. My next guest has been vocal about hybrid work models and the impact of the pandemic on women. Joining us now is Helena Morrissey, Diversity Project Chair and incoming AJ Bell Chair. Helen was CEO of Newton Investment Management, of course, for 15 years and chaired the Investment Association from 2014 to 17. Helena, great to speak to you then on this very important subject. So as many businesses around the world and many businesses here in London where I find myself this morning, will be thinking about the future of the office, returning to office environments, what that looks like, hybrid models. What opportunity do we have then, in your view, to redefine how we work?
Well, good morning, Anna. I think this is not just once in a lifetime opportunity, but a once in forever opportunity. It's been true that up until this point, up until the pandemic, then working from home or flexible working, I think, has carried a stigma. It's usually been associated with companies sort of giving women a favour, doing women a favour. And I know the nickname has been shirking at home rather than working at home, which has been very unfair. And of course, over the last year, we've seen that it's not just possible to work remotely, but actually we can be very productive. And I think for a lot of men as well, they've seen the light that actually a lot of the practices that we engaged on before, hours and hours at the same desk in the same office, is just not that conducive to the best work, to the best output. Of course, we need to also collaborate and we need innovative thinking that comes from time in the office as well. But as we just heard from the lady at Standard Chartered, this idea of hybrid working is taking off, and I think it's a game changer.
How do we make sure, Helena, that working from home does not carry a stigma in the future? Clearly it hasn't done for the last year because so many people have been doing it. But how do we make sure that as some people return for some of their work days to the office, that those who are at home are not out of view and out of mind?
Well, I think this is a critical point, and I would like to encourage companies when they're thinking about these new hybrid models that to encourage employees to take certain days of the week at home and certain in the office. I think there is a danger that we end up, and we saw this perhaps last autumn when there was a brief foray back into the office last summer, that actually it was more young men that went back in, and a lot of women who obviously had childcare responsibilities as well decided to stay at home. And we don't want to have a two-tier system, and we don't want to have a setback in terms of gender equality in the workplace. So it needs to be prescribed a little. Most companies that I know are surveying their employees. They're finding out what they want. Most want to work in some way flexibly and in some way a combination of days in the office, days at home. And then I think companies need to say, well, that should be roughly 3 days in the office or 4, whatever it is, but don't leave it completely to people's discretion.
Is a hybrid offering going to be something that's crucial for the war for talent when it comes to financial services, Helena?
I really think so. I've been researching a little bit more, because this is not supposed to be a plug, but for a new book on particularly career advice for women. But I've been looking at, again, the pattern. And so often women just feel, once they've had children in particular, that they can't sort of physically do it all, that the demands on them, particularly when their children are young, and the need to be present in the office, this sort of preponderance of presenteeism that we've seen in the financial industry in particular, that's just not doable. It's not, you just can't be done for a certain amount of time. And then they leave and obviously then struggle to get back. This way, I mean, it's not just women, as I said earlier, but men can have more sustainable careers. They can work really hard, but don't have to build in commutes. They don't have to necessarily engage in so much international travel, etc.
Yeah, so much time saved, not in transportation. Is there something that the city, thinking about London here for a moment, Helena, as this is a more immediate concern maybe for London than other parts of Europe, is there something that the city should be doing centrally to try and enable this, to make this more appealing, the hybrid model?
Well, something that we're doing with the diversity project that I chair, which sort of represents all the investment managers and is a sort of member organisation trying to improve both culture and diversity. We're trying to gather together all the good examples of flexible working, of hybrid working, of smart working. I've noticed that people do seem ready and willing and able to share. In fact, just before joining you, I was answering some emails from some of our member firms about this very thing and about obviously everyone's gearing up right now to get back to the office, but to do so with the knowledge which we've learned in the last year. So I do see a willingness to share. I think it's very difficult to come up with a one-size-fits-all model. Every firm is a little bit different, and obviously not all are based in London. So I think we just have to be sensitive to that. But it's, as I say, a very exciting moment.
Helena, thank you very much for your time. Good to speak to you. Helena Morrissey, Diversity Project Chair, and incoming AJ Bell Chair. Thank you very much for giving us your insights on this important subject.